Hey, I'm still in the Seattle area. Weather's great again. My son and my father are able to play together. It's really cool. Um, but I've been looking a lot more closely at the oil market, and I found that there's a gap in the oil market right now between what the physical numbers say should be happening and what the price is actually doing. Executives from Exxon and Chevron stood up publicly and said something that should have sent the price of oil to 150 or more. That was months ago, and it never happened. Instead, prices kept getting talked back down again and again, each time they threatened to spike toward those levels the executives warned about, and it made the war more palatable than it otherwise would have been. I found a detail about what's happening globally that changes how you should understand all of this. This isn't a war the United States got dragged into. It's a war the United States started, and that grants the US some options it wouldn't have had otherwise, including, and I'll argue, an incentive to keep the oil price low right up until the midterms, but maybe let it run after that. It began on February 28th when the US and Israel launched an attack on Iran, not the other way around. That's important because it means every part of this, when it escalates, when it pauses, when a ceasefire holds or breaks, isn't happening to the US. It's happening because of decisions the US is making on its own timeline, which means the price of oil tied to this war was never purely a market responding to some outside shock. It's a market responding to a conflict that one side, the side with the loudest microphone in the world, chose to start and can choose to end. That changes everything that comes next, because a man who can end a war whenever he wants can also change an oil price whenever he wants. They call it jawboning, talking a market into the direction you want it to go, instead of letting actual supply and demand get us there on its own. Look at how things escalated. Early on, he made a direct prediction about the price itself, saying oil would come back, dropping like a rock. That's the kind of thing any commenter could say, but later, the comments that actually moved the market weren't about the price anymore. They were about the war itself, and the market really reacted to those. That's because commenting on a price is just an opinion, but narrating a war that you started and are in control of is something else entirely. Watch how many times this exact shape repeats. Oil creeps up towards triple digits, a deal gets announced or progress gets claimed, or a settlement gets floated as close. Prices drop, sometimes 5-7% in one session. Then, days later, the deal falls apart, Iran denies it, or the fighting resumes and the price creeps back up. Then the cycle starts again. It happened when Trump said the war would end very quickly, with no deal in place. Oil dropped that day. It happened again when he said talks were proceeding nicely. It happened again when he said the US has made a great settlement. While Iranian state media was reporting Tehran hadn't approved anything, the oil price kept sliding down anyway. And it doesn't work this way for anyone else in this story. If Iran said we're close to a deal, nobody would move the oil market. Iran doesn't get to decide whether the fighting stops. But when the US says it, the market listens, because the US actually does get to decide that. That's not a rhetorical trick working on gullible traders. That's traders correctly pricing in the fact that the one making the announcement is also the one holding the only vote that counts. This oil price isn't reacting to a war beyond anyone's control. It's reacting to a war one government started and can end whenever it chooses. So after taking all this into account, here's kind of how I'm looking at it. A president heading into a midterm election has an unusually specific interest in one thing above almost anything else economically: what a gallon of gas costs the week people go vote. That's the incentive I flagged back at the start of this, and it's why my read is simple. Expect this price to stay managed right up until people vote, and expect the physical pressure that's been building up underneath it this whole time to show up in the price shortly after the midterms. They can do war as long as they like, but they can't hold the oil price down forever. But we'll see. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Shout out Rich Eisen. We fill our email briefing with content like this. Get it at crownforge.energy/deal-flow.